I'm Art Davidson, and I was born on March 22nd, 1927, and in Polk County, Des Moines, Iowa. Moved to Minneapolis when I was a year old, and I don't remember too much of it, but my parents moved there, and they had a store, furniture store in Des Moines, and they had bought a store called Bowtell's in Minneapolis, which was on 5th and Marquette downtown in Minneapolis, which my father, Abe Davidson, took over and ran it with his cousin, Tom Levitt. Or not cousin, brother-in-law, excuse me. And from there, it was a big store on 5th and Marquette, and the largest furniture store in the city.
How did the family happen to get into the furniture business, Art?
Well, my grandfather, in order to not have to go to in the service in the army for Russia, because he was born and lived in Lithuania, and they had a draft, and in order for him to get out of it, they raised the money enough for him to come over in steerage over to the United States. He was 14, 15, or 16. I was related to me at 14, but between my father and my aunt, one of them said 16. So
When he came over, did he have any family here?
he had no family. He landed in New York and had to raise money so he could live. So he started in the peddling business. But he was warned that there were too many around the New York area, and he would do better if he came west. Well, there was some distant relations in Omaha, no, in Des Moines, excuse me, in Des Moines, and he started out peddling from Des Moines, Iowa, and
Do you remember
traveled from Des Moines to Denver.
what
by
was he
train.
peddling? Do you remember? Or do
He
you
was peddling things like ties, and they had what they called a dickie for women, which was just the front of a blouse, and they wore a jacket over it. The women did, and some of them were quite fancy, but they were lightweight. It was anything that was lightweight. He sold thread and needles and material as well, anything that he could carry on his back from farmhouse to farmhouse, and then onto the train. And he would give the conductor, he didn't have any money, so he'd give the conductor a tie or something in order to get, and he'd let him ride to the next station point, so that he'd get out and walk again. Sometimes he would sleep in the station, or he'd sleep in the fields because he didn't want to spend any of the money. he was trying to save it for bringing his family over to join him, which he did.
Who did he bring over?
Well, he brought his two brothers, uh, and he brought his. I think he also was instrumental in bringing his future wife over, who were related, the Cohn family in Des Moines. And those are the people he brought over. I don't think he brought any of the older people who wanted to stay there. So they did not come. But the younger ones came. And came out to Des Moines. And his two brothers that he brought over went into the furniture business with him. By that time, he had started a store. An elderly lady, a customer of his, had said that she would loan him several $100s, and he should open a store and not have to do all of the hiking around the countryside, just peddling whatever he could to raise money. And so he rented a store and a wagon and a horse to deliver, and started collecting secondhand furniture, and eventually changing into a full line furniture store with new furniture. And his two brothers came in. He brought them in with him to run the store, and they became the largest furniture store in Des Moines through the years. As a matter of fact, they spread out and ended up with Des Moines, Waterloo, stores in Des Moines, Waterloo, Mason City, Kansas City, and Tulsa, Oklahoma. Then in 1932, the family, they broke up the stores, and the two brothers, Jake and Louis Davidson, took the Waterloo, Des Moines, Waterloo, Mason City, and Tulsa stores. Jake taking the ones in Des Moines, Waterloo, and Mason City, and Louis Cohn took the Tulsa, Oklahoma store, and my father and Tom Levitt, who had married my father's oldest sister, took Kansas City and Minneapolis, and from there spread out to stores in St. Cloud and Grand Forks and Minneapolis, Kansas City, and with North Kansas City, and well, they had 3 stores anyway in Kansas City, and they also had stores in St. Cloud, Minnesota, and Grand Forks, North Dakota, and they had started a store in Omaha for Aaron Levitt, Tom and Levitt and Jenny Davidson's oldest son, to run, so that he had a store. And he ran the store in Omaha, and He then married Louise Gold, who had a store in, the Golds had a store in Lincoln, Nebraska.
On your grandfather's side, you mentioned he had two brothers.
Hmm.
Was that
No, there was there were a couple of girls also, sisters that he brought over, but I'm not real sure on their married names. I could look it up in the books, but
now? How about on your mother's side?
on my mother's side, my mother was born in, well, she was born in Chicago, but her parents came over. Her father's father was from the same area in Lithuania. And they had come over earlier, I believe. And part of that family, they were originally around Milwaukee. It's where they ended up over here. And Saul Levy was her father, and he was not real healthy, and the doctors thought he would do better by leaving Milwaukee and coming out southwest into, I believe it was Kansas, somewhere in Kansas. And from there, they ended up coming up to Omaha. But mother was born in Milwaukee, I believe. And but she went to lived in Omaha and went to Central High School. And her father had a paper jobbing company in Omaha that he started. And he did quite well. He was a 33rd degree Mason, honorary degree, and had gone to Washington to have it conferred. And my Saul and Bessie Levy lived at 1030 North 33rd, or 1033 North 33rd. It's one of the two. I'm not quite sure which one, but it was north in Omaha. And they had the only house left standing after the, what was it, 1917 tornado that hit Omaha. It moved their house, but it was still standing. It was just off of they had to have it reset on the foundation.
All right, let's go back and talk about your grandparents. What are your memories of your grandparents?
Well, Saul Levy taught me my decimals when I was in grade school, and he lived with us, but for a very short time. He back and forth between Omaha and Minneapolis, but he had a very bad heart, and he passed away when I was 7 years old. My father's father, Saul Davidson, they're both Sauls, had, of course, the store in Des Moines, And I traveled down to visit he and Grandma Davidson a number of times. In fact, and would stay for a week or so in Des Moines with them. Uh, every other year or something like that, we'd go down. And I learned to play cards with Grandpa Davidson. And he, of course, was not active in the business in those days, but he did come to my bar mitzvah, he and Grandma Davidson. My Grandpa Levy didn't, of course, he had passed away. Grandma Levy was there.
Where did this take place?
That was in Minneapolis. Minneapolis at the conservative shul in Minneapolis. And although we were members of the temple, but Temple Israel in Minneapolis, but they did not have in those days, the Reform did not have bar mitzvahs. But I was 10. Both my sisters had we had a private tutor for learning Hebrew in Minneapolis. And of course, I was the only one. They weren't bat mitzvah because they didn't have much of that in those days. But they did have, and as well as they didn't have the bar mitzvah, but it was traditional. And Grandma and Grandpa Davidson were belonged to all three. They were Reform, Conservative, and Orthodox. However, my mother and father, after they passed away, reverted to not keeping kosher. But up until that time, while they were still alive, she did.
All right, tell me about your mother and father.
Oh, well, my father was the oldest boy of the Davidson family. He had two sisters who were older, and then he had a brother that was younger. And but he was the older of the two boys. The oldest sister was Jenny Levitt, who married Tom Levitt. Jenny Davidson, who married Tom Levitt. And the younger of the two sisters was Sarah Davidson, who married Harry Kolakowski from Omaha. So we were related to the Kolakowskis two ways, and my mother's family, they all went to Central High School. She had a sister and a brother. The mother was the oldest, and her brother was next, and he lived in Washington, D.C. with his wife and their daughter. And they just had one daughter. The and her sister was married to Harry Kulikowski, who was Sarah Davidson's husband. And Sarah Davidson passed away. They had two daughters together, he and Sarah Davidson. And but the Sarah passed away right after the birth of her second daughter. And Sadie Kulikowski, Harry's remarried Sadie, I don't remember her name, maiden name, but she had taken care of and helped nurse Sarah. And after Sarah passed away, Sadie and Harry, a couple of years later, got married. And they had two children, a boy and a girl, that who both live in Chicago.
How long did you live in Minneapolis, Art?
I lived in Minneapolis till I was married, and through college, University of Minnesota, and I met Betsy, who lived in St. Paul, and we met we went to the University of Minnesota and got married. And when we came back from our honeymoon, we moved up to Grand Forks, North Dakota. We had bought a store up there. And we moved up there in 1950. And from March 1950 to July of 1950. In the meantime, they had the floods of 1950 in Grand Forks, the Red River of the North, which flows north into Canada, flooded, and I ended up on the night shift, pumping out, making sure the pumps were running to keep the water out of the store. And that's when Betsy learned how to play poker. Because we had a couple of the drivers and helpers that were with us, and we would sit and play poker while we were after we got done checking the pumps and made sure they were going. And
How long did you spend in North Dakota?
in North Dakota, we left in July. That was all. That was a short one. But in the meantime, they had bought a store in St. Cloud, Minnesota, and they had a manager there, but the manager quit. And so my father called me up on Thursday night at about 1 o'clock Friday morning, I believe it was, and woke me up out of a sound sleep and informed me that I was to be in St. Cloud on Monday to open the store. I was taking it over. So we had planned a trip with some friends from the university who had a house in northern Minnesota, and we were going to stop with them for the weekend, spend the weekend with them. So I quick rushed around and got all of our bills paid up and so forth. And we packed up and left Grand Forks and moved to St. Cloud. We went out, had our weekend with our friends, and then we got. And Monday morning we were in St. Cloud, and we were there for 3 years in St. Cloud, and which was a very enjoyable community. But St. Cloud had only 9 Jewish families, 9.5. There was one mixed marriage. But we did have a Catholic worker who was from Minneapolis, and George Werner, and he had been a Shabbos Goy in Minneapolis, where they had to have somebody who was not Jewish or and could heat the stove and do things like that for on Shabbos so they could cook their meal and so forth. And so he was the one and he was German, so he could speak Yiddish to a certain extent, Plattdeutsch, and so he made up if we needed the 10th for a minion. And anyway, it was very enjoyable up there. After we met some people and became acquainted with the community, but it was a little rough for Betsy when we first started out there. But actually, we found out that her mother's family had lived in St. Cloud for a while, some of them. So that helped. And we had one lady there that we met by the name of Landy, who had us pinpointed and could tell us all of our family within a half hour of our meeting her. I didn't know it, and Betsy didn't know it all, but she did. It's a small Jewish world.
Were the different stores all owned by the individual members of the family?
No. It was a corporation, and they were managed by some by members of the family, and some by hired managers. But it was overseen by members of the family. They had a board of directors and so forth. And we would travel from store to store. I can remember, amazingly, we had one meeting that we were holding in Omaha and Kansas City and Chicago, all in one day. We took Mid-Continent Airlines, which is no longer, but we flew from early morning from Minneapolis to Omaha, had a meeting here with Aaron and his group, and went through the store, and from here we went to Kansas City and met there and looked at the stores, then got a plane to Chicago and met with some of our financiers there in a meeting, and then we're back home that night. in Minneapolis. It was a long day.
Growing up in Minneapolis, what was family life like for you? Did the families get together often for holidays and so on?
Uh, a fair amount, but not entirely. Uh, we would get together with that Aunt Jenny's, and or they'd be at our house, but not very often. That was their likes and dislikes were a little different than ours, but we did, we were very friendly. But and as kids, we were all different ages. Their Jenny and Tom's family were older than we were, than I was anyway. And I think Mary was my oldest sister was close to some of their ages, but they have all passed away. Norman was the head buyer of the Minneapolis store. Well, Tom was first, and then after Tom passed away, Norman was. And my dad was not a buyer for the store. He was mainly took care of the rest of the business, the hiring and the firing and the collections and office work and all of that. And then when I started, I started out. We had at one time the Minneapolis store was 5 floors and 2 basements and a quarter of a square block in downtown Minneapolis. So it was a big building. And my first job at the store was we had a photography department at Christmas time and so forth. Then in summertime, from the time I was about 14 on, I used to work summers at the store. I worked at the warehouse, and then I worked with the carpet layers and installing carpet and linoleum and all of this sort of thing. Then they moved me to the store, and I worked in selling carpet for a while, and from there they had me go work in the office and credit and collections and that sort of thing, and then on the stock keeping and how to keep the records and all of that. And then they gave me the gift department, china, lamps, and gifts that I managed for a couple of years. And then they had bought out another store in Minneapolis, and so they sent me over to close it out for the going out of business sale, which I did very successfully. And after that, I went back into the furniture department at the store and bought the sleepers, dual sleep, hide-a-beds and so forth, bedding, and bedroom furniture, and juvenile furniture for the store in Minneapolis. And bedding department itself alone, I got up to better than this was back in the early 50s. And I got that up to doing close to $6 million in just bedding. In those days, that's quite a few mattresses, and box springs, and hide beds, and all sofa sleepers of all kinds, as well as the bedroom.
When did you say the Omaha store opened, approximately?
The Omaha store opened, well, it opened as a department in Penny's. And then when Aaron Levitt, Tom Levitt, and Jenny's oldest son, came back from, they got out of college, he took over the store down here. They had moved from Penny's, had decided to do their own furniture, and they moved to 416 South 16th Street in Omaha, and Aaron came and took it over when he graduated from college, which I think was about, had to be somewhere around 36, 38, somewhere around there. And then Davidson, my father's youngest brother, had been running the Kansas City store, and he became very ill. And so he was not in the store for, almost 2 years, I think. And they decided they had to send Aaron down to run the store in Kansas City. And he moved down there from Omaha. In the meantime, when he moved down there, we had a buyer that had worked with Aaron in the store in Omaha that was named manager of the store down here. That lasted about 8 months, and they dropped in volume, from 850,000 or something like, down to 850,000 from well over $1 million business. And so they sent me down here, and they took him up in Omaha, in Minneapolis, as a buyer under Norman. And I took over this store down here and moved down here. And that was in September of '57 that I came down to Omaha. And I started early September to manage the store down here, and my wife Betsy was from didn't come down. We had Mary Beth and Doug. We were both born at that time. Mary Beth was 3, and Doug was under a year. And she was still in Minneapolis, and we were trying to sell our home up there and not having much success. So finally I rented and I was living in the hotel down here, and coming down, I would leave Minneapolis on early Monday morning so I could get down here and have a meeting with my salespeople and so forth by 8 o'clock in the morning. And then I would leave here Friday evening after the store closed and fly back to Minneapolis for the weekend to be with my wife and children. And I was putting in better than 80 hours a week from 8 o'clock Monday morning till the time I left on Friday evening. So that wasn't much sleep. So, but anyway, I got her down here in December, and we rented a little house on South 56th Street, a duplex, a little tiny thing. I had a advertising man who was a big guy, and he would sit in our living room, and we would discuss what we were going to advertise at night, and he would sit on the sofa, and you couldn't walk through the room because his feet were from one side to the other in this duplex. So, but anyway, we were there while we built the house here, and I rented a house there, and I still owned the house in Minneapolis. So it was not a good time, but it worked out. We got this house built. Started building in December, and we moved in actually moved in, I think, in April of 58. So that's when we got settled. We had one problem because my father-in-law, my wife's mother, had passed away. Betsy's mother had passed away in her 40s. But IG, her dad, was in St. Paul, and he and Betsy's aunt Ann came down for Passover. We had just moved into the house that day, the day of the first Passover, and they helped us move in as much as we could, and Doug, of course, we put to sleep because it was late at night by the time we got done getting everything out, and Betsy fixing dinner. We started our Passover meal at, must have been 11 o'clock at night, a little late, but we did have it, and we went through the service. And it was quite an evening. So.
And how long did you keep the store on 16th Street?
We were there. I was there until from the fall of '57, and then the company decided that they wanted to. I was with the company and, of course, managing it, and we sold. They decided they wanted to sell the store in '61, and I ended up buying the store from the company, and I left the company and started running the store, but I closed out at the store downtown and ran it, going on a business sale, and closed it out, and started building the store out in Dodge. At that time, we bought the land and started building the store.
I have to ask the question, did you bring the volume back up when you came to Omaha?
Oh, you bet. In fact, we exceeded what it was before. Yeah.
You saw a lot of changes in downtown over those years too.
Oh yes, oh yes. And was a member of the downtown organization and so forth. And this company had stock in the downtown association. Of course, that dropped out when I moved out. We sold the store and moved out west. But was on the board of the downtown association with Brandeis and the other fellows down there. It was an interesting time. This is my grandfather, Saul Davidson, that started the business in Des Moines, Iowa in 1885. And he's the one that came over at 14 or 16, whatever, to and carried a pack on his back, get started. This is Abe Davidson, who's my grandfather's oldest son that took over running of the business along with his brother-in-law, Tom Levitt, for Grandpa. This is Grandpa Davidson on the left, and a passerby that just wanted his picture taken, standing next to him on the right, in the front of his first store in Des Moines, Iowa in 1885. And you see in there used furniture and trunks and other items that they had for sale that they had out on the street. And then, of course, if it started to rain or anything, they had to pull everything in quickly. This is the store that I built in Omaha in 1961, that when we opened on Dodge Street, and we ran it until the Children's Hospital wanted it, and we were told that we could keep leasing it, but then they decided they wanted it for parking, so they took it over and tore it down. It is now a parking lot. This is Davidson store our Bautel store in Minneapolis on Central Avenue, a store that we had purchased in our group. This is Duff and Rep store in Kansas City that we purchased and became Davidson's Duff and Rep after that. This is Minneapolis outlet, Bautel's outlet store in Minneapolis. This is Davidson's in Kansas City, the main store that we used along with the Duff and Rep for a while. This is Bautel's in Minneapolis on 5th and Marquette, and this was the largest of any of the stores in our group. This is our downtown Omaha store on 16th Street, and the it comprised of 5 floors and a basement, and pretty good sized store right across the street from Orchard and Willow. This is the Kansas City outlet store for Davidson's. This is North Kansas City store, Davidson's, which we ran there for many years. And this is St. Cloud store that my first management of a store in St. Cloud. Here's the Leader store in Minneapolis, which is a lower end promotional store that we ran. Davidson's Kansas City, Kansas store, which makes a lineup of stores that we had. I'd like to close this verbal history and let you all know how much we love you, and the reason we're trying to pass this on to you. We love you, Mary Beth, love you, and Bruce Muskin. We love you, Doug and Juanita Davidson, and your children, Ann Muskin, Emily Muskin, Zach Muskin, Brian Schultz, Brandon Schultz, Austin Davidson, and Michelle Davidson. And please remember us with all of our faults, but also that we love you.